All right, thanks for having us again. I'm a little bit more excited about this presentation than yesterday's one. I was a little bit more stressed about the science one, but this one, we just get to talk about what we do every day, and I'm really looking forward to it. I'm sure a few of you probably Googled Kelsey's name when you saw that she was going to be on the conference, and you're like, oh, who's this person? Like, you might have heard of her from... She hasn't had a massive international result yet, and so you probably would have come across maybe All Athletics or IWF website and seen Kelsey's progression as an athlete. And you probably saw this jump from 52 to 58 to 63 and thought, that's a bit dodgy, isn't it? And so I guess what this highlights is that Kelsey was quite late to the sport in terms of starting javelin throw seriously, and sort of these first formative years, which we'll talk about, she sort of took a bit of time to obviously learn the event and was still playing high-level sports. Unfortunately, she had an elbow injury in 2012, but that was sort of a turning point where she sort of started to commit to athletics, and then had some really positive results the next sort of 3 years. Last season we had a stress fracture, and we'll talk a bit about that as well, which is unfortunate. And so we'll start off with some stats around Kelsey. And I know when I was first starting to coach javelin, the one thing I wanted to know was what can other good throwers do. So these tables to me were awesome. I was like, sweet, all right, 60-meter thrower, let's try and get our numbers up. And I think it's important to do that, to understand where your athlete sits relative to other athletes, because I think there is a minimum level of athleticism that you need. However, again, once you sort of get that level, you need to understand what works for your athlete. And so you can sort of see that Kelsey's got a pretty decent level of strength. The back squats are full range, sort of butt to the floor. She's jerked a decent amount above her weight, cleaned, got really good. So those are neutral grip chin-ups, so we have palms facing together. But obviously what's important to understand about this, that she didn't achieve these all at the same time. These are all, the last 2 years at different time points of the season and different themes of training is when you sort of achieve these levels of strength. Overheads is probably something Kelsey's pretty strong at, and again, that's something we think will keep going up this year. Seems to correlate with when she's getting fresh and powerful in training. But the jump testing is something we're working on bringing up. We've always done bounding, but we've never actually tested the test itself. So that's the new one this season. And we do a sort of variation of the overhead forward med ball test with the kilo ball. It's sort of a 3-step, and then just try and throw it. But we treat it more like a javelin throw. We don't try and get massive extension. We just kind of run in and pop it off the end. So again, that's specific to what we do and why we do it. Height, as you can see, Kelsey's pretty tall, but she's got a pretty good arm span as well. And weight generally hovers anywhere between 69 and 71. It's pretty stable. We haven't put too much attention on that over the last couple of years.
Oh, great. Yeah, it is on. Oh. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm going to talk a little bit about my background in general. So I sort of started as a multi-sport athlete. As you can see there, netball, basketball, tennis, gymnastics and swimming. And they all had seasons. So, winter season would be one sport, and then the summer season would be another sport. My real introduction to athletics came through school sports. So once a year we'd have our annual school carnival and kind of just jump in and do all the events. And I started out as a discus thrower. So that's where my love for athletics really came about. Yes, I dabbled in javelin at a young age. I first picked it up at 13 years, as I said, at school carnivals, but was quite successful as a discus thrower as a junior and made it through to my state level where I competed there. So I didn't really pick up javelin or start training more seriously until I was about 16 years and really had success at Pacific School Games in 2008, which was in Canberra. And I think that was the real reason I decided to just participate in all the events, was because it was a home athletics, and we kind of got the opportunity to do that. So, yeah, participated in it, won that event through 45.54, which for me at the time was also a huge improvement. And it was really the first time that I decided that javelin was going to be my event that was going to get me to the Olympics. And that's what I wanted to pursue long term as well. Kind of sounds silly now, but at the time that was like, yep, this is the event, this is what I'm going to do. So after that event, I started looking for a more experienced coach who could specifically coach me for javelin, and that's when I came across Alison O'Riordan at the AIS. And at the time, she was coaching para-athletes, and she had one javelin thrower in her squad. So I kind of was lucky enough to jump in with them and sort of be a training partner for this athlete. And it really exposed me to a professional daily training environment. I got access to the gym for the first time with a professionally written gym program specific to what I needed as a javelin thrower. And then I also got access to the recovery centre there as well. So it really sort of set the scenes for what it was like to be an elite athlete, even though at that point I was still at school, but it really gave me a good taste of it. And I was still playing netball at quite a competitive level until I was 22. So I played for at a national level at 19 and 20, and then at a state level until I was 22. So Mike's going to show you a little bit about netball, what the game is.
So as you can see, it's a lot of running, jumping, and then stopping. So kind of pretty similar to javelin throwing in terms of, I think you develop quite a multi-directional, I guess, eccentric strength from doing it.
My position that I played was the goal defence. So I was across the midcourt and in the circle. So it required a lot of jumping, long throws.
And so, I mean, netball is obviously athletic, but at the same time, every other sport in Australia hates it because we all think it stunts the athleticism, because unlike basketball, you can keep running after you catch the ball. This one, you have to stop dead and pass the ball. So for Kelsey's development, it was great. I'm not going to say it's good for every athlete, but that's part of her journey and part of where she's come from. One thing Kelsey didn't mention is that she was actually born in South Africa and lived there till she was, 9 years old?
Yeah.
9 years old. 9. So I know Tess just always tells us when he sees us, she's the one that got away, but he could have been Sinette's training partner. So what we'll do first, we'll just go through Kelsey each year, and you can sort of see the progression as a thrower. And so this is 18-year-old Kelsey. Learning how to throw javelin, pretty much. So keep an eye out in the background. There's a very famous javelin coach looking on.
Feel free to have a giggle, because I certainly did when I watched these.
So first of all, she's looking at the javelin, trying to figure out what it is.
How do I hold this thing?
Lots of thinking, trying to figure out how to stand, and as most beginners do that, it's a pretty common thing. And whack. So you can see it's pretty agricultural, as we'd say in Australia, very raw, but...
So I think the main thing for me was I didn't know a lot about the event. I just kind of, as I said, did really well at this one competition and saw an opportunity for myself. So as a junior, I was told that my strengths were I had a really fast and long arm. I was strong enough to block, and I think that really comes back to my netball and the skills I kind of developed there, being able to stop quickly and stop hard, I guess. And again, didn't know about the event, had no fear, kind of ran in hard and hit it.
Let's have one more look. So, I mean, at this point, she's just learning the movement pattern, and you see Master Coach Hanu in the background. Everyone else is looking away, so they're obviously seen enough. And so Hanu was down for a training camp / National Throws Conference, and so luckily he was there to watch. I would have loved to talk to Hanu from 2009 and get his thoughts on Kelsey, because I mean, if you get an 18-year-old thrower, looks like that, how can you really tell that they're going to be a 63-meter thrower in a couple of years' time? It's like anything. Kelsey was lucky she was put in the right environment, had the right environment put around her to take her career further. But a lot of coaches, or if she was in a city without access to that sort of facility, she may never have actually become the thrower that she is today. So part of it's luck, I think, and part of it's obviously being in the right environment with the right people. So this is the next year in June. So 18-year-old Kelsey, you can see she's learned how to run with the javelin a bit more, which is good. She's getting a bit more confident in the way she moves, but still not quite sure how to carry her speed into the block. And obviously almost comes to a dead stop when she throws it. In another 5 months' time, as the winter turns to summer in Australia, again, starting to figure things out, hold positions, keep the arm back, doesn't drop the hand as much. There's Alison in the background. Again, you can sort of see progression. She's starting to get the feel for the event, and what was that, 46?
No, yeah, that one would have been...
Yeah, so ended up throwing
48 maybe.
48 metres that year as a 19-year-old, which is a solid junior. Wouldn't have made a world junior team.
No, just missed out by a metre that year.
Actually turned down the national under-19 squad to play
netball.
Under-19 netball. So, missed an opportunity in our national pathway to actually get that help as well. But, that's just her. It was her decision at the time, and wasn't the wrong one looking back, but...
Yeah, so 2011, or so midway through end of 2010, Alison had to head back to the UK for personal reasons, which left me without a coach. And I was lucky enough that Aaron Holt at the AIS, who works in strength and conditioning, put his hand up to coach me afterwards. So I was lucky enough that he picked me up. And I guess I made big changes with him. He brought some new aspects to the table because of his background, and he'd been around athletics but hadn't specifically coached a javelin thrower. So there were some new things that came there. And I think the biggest things you'll see change-wise is my physicality, and movement quality is a little bit better on the runway, and obviously my technique kept developing as well.
Black. Good.
So 2012, as Mike said earlier, it's probably a big change for me in terms of what happened for me that year. So I started the year with an elbow injury, and I think it comes back to just an increase in throwing load too quickly. We tried to put ball throws in as well as javelin throws, and I started off getting elbow tendonitis, so quite a tight forearm. Oops. And that led to a rupture of my MCL. So I was lucky enough that it was a complete rupture in the middle of the tendon, which didn't require surgery, which meant that we could take a conservative approach. It still meant 6 to 8 weeks in an elbow brace with increasing the range every 2 weeks, and months of rehab after that because of not using my shoulder or my arm at all. So it pretty much took the whole 2012 year to come back from that. But what it meant was that I did spend a lot of time in the gym that year just building general strength and general power, and then slowly coming back into the throws. So we had a really slow progression and a slow approach back into training, which ended up serving me really well for the following year.
How many throws in a session were you taking at that point?
It would have been close to 20 probably, or 20 plus some ball throws. I couldn't say exactly, but it was more than I had been doing. Yeah, so as I said, off the back of that 2012 year, I had a very successful 2013 year. And again, it was a return to competition for me. I was excited. I was, happy to be back throwing. Pretty much every comp that year I PB'd, so almost had this unrealistic expectation of what it was to come back and throw. So my PB went from 52 to 58 during that domestic season, I think over maybe 6 competitions, and I threw my 58 at our national championships that year. And again, I bring back my main improvements to my strength and power that I was able to develop during that off season that year, and just my general athleticism across the board. You see, we'll show a video. I'm moving a lot better, and kind of again like no fear aspect. Come in and hit the block hard at the front. But it was also quite an interesting year in the fact that the 58 meant that I qualified for the World University Games, and my coach and I discussed it, and it would have been my first Australian team, but I decided to turn it down that year because I needed an extra 2 meters to qualify or get the A qualifier for Commonwealth Games the following year. And so we thought that it would be best spent another year in the gym, another year of solid off-season training to find that extra 2 meters, because the main goal was Com Games the following year.
Cool. So again, if you've stalked YouTube, you've probably seen this video. So this was Kelsey's personal best throw from 2014. As you can see, it's that sort of no fear aspect Kelsey talked about. She just comes charging in, commits the delivery, and just really hits it hard. Just unwittingly throwing a carbon Diana javelin, which was probably a little bit stiff for what the physical.
I didn't know any better at the
technical
time.
capabilities, given Kelsey, especially at that point of her career, the tip was up here somewhere, so probably wasn't the smartest choice of javelin. But as again, Canberra's a great place to throw javelin. There seems to be lots of good throws there. So she, and this was sort of the throw that took Kelsey from no one in Australian athletics knowing who she was to, oh, okay, there's this girl, a bit of talent.
Yeah, so 2014 was or has been my most successful year to date. It meant, as I said, you saw my PB throw at the very start of the year, but had a pretty good domestic season, so was able to back up those throws a couple times. I did suffer a couple injuries that year as well, which I guess I didn't know until after the fact how serious they were, but kind of just rode through the waves, and I made my first team, which was Com Games, and it was lots of new experiences for me that year. So again, first team, first time traveling overseas with the team, first time competing in an international competition, first time in a stadium, first time in a village environment. There were just so many new things for me that I just was kind of riding this wave of new experiences, and didn't really go over the top with trying to understand them or any of that sort of stuff. So I think that's maybe why my Com Games was quite successful, was just kind of rode it for what it was. And when I got out to compete, I hadn't competed for quite a few months, and yeah, it was just fun for me, and I just really made the most of that. And I think a lot of it as well is I work with a sports psychologist back home, and while I wasn't able to throw, I was still able to prep for Com Games in terms of mental imagery. So I prepared in a different sense that year, but we're still kind of ready for it. And yeah, I came third that year at Com Games in my first Australian team.
And obviously, with success, obviously Kelsey had a few injuries, and so what we took away from this is, obviously we learned a lot of lessons from 2014 that have helped us move forward. And so, as Kelsey mentioned, she went 60-18 in her first comp of the year. There are only 2 women throwing the 600-gram javelin in that competition, which apparently is a rule, so it didn't count as a qualifier. So had to come out the very next weekend, and I think Kelsey admitted herself she just wanted it so bad that she just came in and really hit it hard. Unfortunately, tore a supraspinatus on that throw. Didn't know it at the time. Woke up the next day being like, "Ooh, something's a bit sore." And what kind of happened was, for the next 3 or 4 weeks, came out the next weekend in Perth and threw 61, I think, as well at Perth Track Classic. But subsequently, each week just started to lose power, and then at nationals, pain pain in the shoulder. You got pain, you changed the way you move, came through and had a grade 2 elbow strain of the MCL again. So, again, but in Kelsey admitted that naivety of an athlete who hasn't been at that level before and hasn't getting all these new experiences and all these positives, you sort of just push through that pain and then unfortunately have to deal with the consequences later. So what Kelsey had sort of developed over that previous 2 years was this kind of idea of, you get your first car, it's a Ford Laser or a Ford Focus, and you rebuild the engine, but you don't rebuild the chassis around it. So she had all this power, but she had no stability, no ability to actually handle that weight room strength that she'd produced in the off season. So I started working with Kelsey in this sort of period between nationals and Commonwealth Games in a sports science capacity, coming out training, filming, being a sounding board for a coach. And it was pretty impressive to see, like, Kels only got back to throwing off a full approach 2 weeks before Glasgow.
Yeah.
Had a comp result in Canberra before she left of about 49 metres. Had a comp a week before when Gates said about 55, and then
maybe 50, 57 or 58 actually.
It's again came out in the arena and threw really well, and a lot of that's down to the work of Grant Ward down the back there, who was the team coach at the time, and he did some amazing things, and some of the things he worked on with Kels at that point we still use today in terms of their technical model. And so I guess this is probably a pretty common scenario for a lot of young throwers, is you have success, but it's like keep doubling down on a bet in a casino. You just keep riding a hot hand, but eventually luck's not going to go your way, and you're going to end up with an injury or something like that. So when Kels got back from Worlds and Com Games 2014, she decided she needed to change the coaching, and being in Canberra, there weren't too many options, and I got a call from our high performance director to help Kelsey out. So as I said, very young, naive coach. I was like, sure, why not? Let's give it a crack. And so 2015 in itself came with a lot of challenges initially, because Athletics Australia are really good in saying that we want to develop you to coach an athlete together. So they were really good in terms of, they sent me here in 2014 to learn as much as I could. And again, Grant Ward down the back there, he's been an amazing mentor to me. He coaches Kim Mickle, who at the time still is Kelsey's one of her greatest rivals, and it shows the selflessness of Grant, and that he sat down with me, showed me what Kim does for training, gave me ideas around what Kelsey should do, and has always been there to be a sounding board for ideas. So I think I was very lucky in the start there that I had a very good mentor, just a phone call away to, just give me as much help as I needed. And so what I guess I got was a very talented athlete. Naive probably isn't the best word. Again, we use the saying green. She was very raw in terms of her understanding of javelin itself and the technical model behind why she actually threw it really fast. So, but what I did inherit was still, she was still only a couple of months post elbow strain, still a couple of months post shoulder tear, and we still have a partial tear of the supraspinatus. We haven't had that fixed, so that's something we've always had to condition around and try and avoid things in the gym that actually flare it up. So a lot of what we do in training is based around our individual issues that and Kelsey's strengths and weaknesses. As I said, you can see with some of the hip testing we showed yesterday, a lot of imbalances and weaknesses we've had to address. As I said, a lot of it was learning as we went, so there's a lot of trial and error in that first year, but luckily Kelsey was good enough to just kind of throw all her trust in me as a coach, even if she maybe shouldn't have at some points. We tried different things, but at the end of the day, we didn't try anything that was too risky that would, we sort of experimented with the basics rather than, or sort of the 1%ers more so than the big meat and potatoes exercises. And still had a good season. Kelsey came out and threw 63.78 first comp of the year in Canberra, which is this throw here. Again, very fast. But again, Kelsey still was a very powerful athlete, but there's still a lot of technical issues we were trying to work around. She lands very shallow with her right foot and sort of falls forward onto that
lovely special
front leg. But because she has such a long arm, she was able to get away with it and rip it over the top. We went to Europe that year, first time ever. Kelsey threw 63 in Solentuna, threw 61 up here in Pitiputis, Jab Carnival, which is great. This is our holding camp in Japan just before World Championships. Went into a first ever qualifying round and threw 60-18 on the first throw, and we're really excited, like, cool, that's, 9 of the last 10 World Championships, that would have made us the final, but unfortunately the depth in women's javelin has improved in the last couple of years and she missed out. Again, there's still things there that weren't perfect, and it's been a progression to try and improve them. So she's still a little bit shallow, weights on the front, still falling through, losing a left hip, and that's something within our technical model they're trying to improve. 2016 was going to be the year that we, took it up a level through 66 metres and, had a glorious Olympics. And it started really well this time last year. We were having a great, we were throwing really well. We had a little concern with some nervy issues in her back, so we laid off that for a bit and then came back into training and started getting a soreness on the right side. With Kelsey's shoulder stuff, she kind of learnt how to push through pain a bit, but unfortunately with backs, you shouldn't. You should never push through pain in the back. And ended up having a pedicle stress fracture on her right side. So that was, I think it was the 1st of March, we sat down with our team and she'd been selected for the Olympics already. So, we had an end goal. We started at the Olympics and we worked our way back for the previous 5 months, and we put in place some goals in terms of, okay, we need to be, first of all, we need to be pain-free. Then after pain-free, we need to be able to reload in the gym. Then we need to be able to throw from a walking throw, from a 3-step, 5-step full approach. And we sort of developed this great plan. And our main goal went from being, on the podium at the Olympics to just getting to the start line. And that was going to be the first goal. And if we got there, then, hopefully a bit like Commonwealth Games, if you get to the start line, maybe you can pull something out of the bag. It wasn't to be this year. We didn't get the result we wanted, probably 4 or 5 weeks short of being there. But what we did learn was how to be very creative in our training, and a lot of the things that we learnt in this last 9 months, we've really taught us a lot about hip, core, pelvis stability, which we think hopefully will hold us in good stead for the future, and we'll show you a fair chunk of it when we go down into the training hall. Anything else about this year? Yeah, Kelsey doesn't like talking about it. And so, our goal for 2017 is obviously to take the next step. This was a couple of days ago, so we're back throwing again and really starting to get the feel and feel comfortable holding positions, and the timing's starting to come back, which is really good. So we're really excited to get home and keep working, and then obviously come out in our domestic season and get back to competing again. And hopefully when we come back to Europe next time in June, July, we'll have some good competition for the girls this year. And so next we'll sort of talk about our actual training and what we do. So Kelsey, so the things we sort of see as her strengths as an athlete are that long arm, and it's almost an intangible thing, because if you look at Kelsey's passive mobility, it's not necessarily anything exceptional. So we're just actually trying the hands over the top test with the javelin and well outside shoulder width. So that flexibility, traditional stuff isn't necessarily there, but Kelsey's got the innate ability to hold her arm back and then really roll up and over the top. She is quite powerful and an athletic person. So again, coming from that sporting background and playing other sports, Kelsey, she loves the challenge. She loves playing sport, and all week we've been playing table tennis. Sport. Yeah, she's been. I hate to say it, but Kelsey's probably got the tally on me in the table tennis this week down in the training hall. So she is quite elastic, and understands how to use that elastic quite well, and she's got really good kinesthetic awareness. So for us, I can sort of give her a cue or talk about changing things, and she seems to be able to make those changes quite easily. It's not a hard thing for Kelsey to play around and with the training. Obviously, our challenges are having a partial tear in the shoulder, so it limits some of the activities that we do and some of the loadings that we have in training. In the past, she's been powerful without stability, and I mean that's something you always got to keep on top of. Tip control is a big one, so I guess as I said, like Kelsey's thrown really far with at times the javelin pointing up to the heavens instead of out at the horizon, and that's something, again, it's a skill of throwing that we've been trying to work on with Kels to help, and a lot of that just comes down to that technical stability and consistency of the way that she throws. And so for those of you that don't live in the Southern Hemisphere, we're just going into our summer season. So for us, we have sort of a unique challenge in a way of having our competition season in February, March back home, and then obviously a European season where the major championships are each year. And so especially for, I guess, developing athletes who are just trying to make a team, it is quite challenging because they really put all their eggs in one basket. They peak hard to try and just get the qualifier and make a team, and then all of a sudden they're left with, okay, we've got 4 months now to peak again at a majors. What do we do? And I think the problem a lot of Australian athletes have is they go too deep into the well. They go back too deep into base training. So I like to think at the point Kelsey is now that we can sort of, we've got her to this level, and it's more about just undulating and keeping her within a certain level. And so Thomas's slides yesterday talked about the way that they load their training, and we have a very, I guess, similar in some ways, but not in others. Like we don't, like we have blocks where we do slightly more strength training or slightly more power training, but generally it's very concurrent. We're just working on all the elements together. We don't really segment, this is strength block, this is power block, this is throwing block. We just try and develop all the athletic qualities together, because at the end of the day, it is a skill event, and if we're not practicing the skill consistently, we're not going to get the results. This is our beautiful track in Canberra. This is the good runway with the tailwind. This is the one with the headwind. And as you can see, there's usually kangaroos and stuff hopping around up here. They haven't hopped onto the track yet, but it is quite a scenic little track. We have 2 preparation 2s there. I just realised we do have a first preparation. After you.
Yeah, so our team, and Mike's put in there, it takes a village to raise a child.
But then I revised it, and there's still only one chief in the village, though, and we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah, so I am lucky enough to work with quite a lot of the experts at the AIS, and try and take what they bring to the table and work it into our programming and try and make me the best well-rounded athlete I can. So obviously I've got Mike as my coach. We've both got mentors, and they both offer us different things. For me, I've been able to take a lot from Danny Samuels, Alana Boyd, Kim Mickle, and Catherine Mitchell over the years, and just from them learn how to be a professional athlete and what it means to, step up when you're in a team and be that role model. So I really look up to those girls, and I guess want to follow in their footsteps. And Mike's got mentors of his own. Yeah,
obviously Grant Ward's a big one. Dion Collins, who was our national junior coach for a while, has been really good. Craig Hilliard, who's my boss down in Canberra, and just, every coach I talk to here, you learn something from, and I think that's the beauty of this sport, is that everyone's quite willing to share information. We don't really keep close guarded secrets. I've learned a lot from David this week with the English group, and Tertius is always great for a conversation when I see him. So I think that's a really important part of sort of fast tracking your development as a coach, is just ask other coaches. They're generally pretty happy to share information, and if they're not, we'll just ask another one.
And then we work really closely with an S&C coach back home, who again was really, really helpful this year. He's kind of the king of rehab, and he was very helpful in been able to adapt exercises and program what I needed specifically to get me back on the track with my back this year. And then I've been able to work with Ben Raysmith, my physio, for the past 3 years now. So we're a very close relationship, and we kind of work off each other now. So I can go in and have a chat about my body, and Ben knows exactly what to do, or and we'll get to it a little bit later, but we've been able to develop some testing and some screening for myself so I can learn from my body and know exactly what I need to do in order to be prepared for training. And then we also work closely with a soft tissue therapist, and Mike mentioned him yesterday that each week I go in now, we do a screening method, and from that he's able to tell what needs to work on to get my body back up to scratch. And so we have a battery of these tests now, and we have a heap of data, so I know what my norms are, and when we start losing range, maybe not just from 1 week, but over a few weeks, then we've got to relook at the training and restructure that a little bit. So that's been really, really helpful. And then his name's Ari. He's actually Finnish as well. Work really closely with him. He's got a background in martial arts and karate and stuff like that, but his movement education, or Pilates, so kind of like crosses between the two, but I've learnt a lot from him in the last 18 months, especially just around core development, like the real basics of it, but then moving out in terms of body movement and learning how to control my body, how to control power, and learn when different positions leak power and how to link that, and then do that on the floor like as a base exercise, but then able to move that into the gym and then into the throws as well. And then, as I mentioned, I see a sports psychologist, and we work weekly most of the time. I have a sports doctor, and my lovely manager who's sitting at the front here, Tero. Really lucky to have him on my team as well. Just a great friend as well. And I'm lucky to have training partners. So not all javelin throwers, but just to have that group environment to bounce off each other. It's a good atmosphere, and it keeps the group alive and training well.
All right, so we'll talk through what we do in the training week. And again, it was interesting to hear what Thomas and Haro do in their training. And, we have our own system that we work around, and it's based off what we've tried many different weekly lineups, and this is the one that we've currently settled on as something we think gets the most out of every aspect of throwing and training. So Kelsey throws javelins or balls twice a week, so Monday, Friday. And that's, at the moment, we do somewhere between 15 to 20 balls like a javelin. So we throw them out into the field or into a net. We've 400 and 500 gram balls mainly. We've worked up to a 600 this year. And then we'll have a javelin session, generally is up and back in the infield, stabbing the javelin, up and back, just walking through it. And then somewhere between 10 and 12 throws from an approach. So whether that's at this point of the year, it's just sort of a three to five step, and that's it. And then we pack it up. So we've learnt that Kelsey can't handle large amounts of volume of throwing. Initially, that was due to the shoulder and the elbow and just trying to protect it. And now she's been asymptomatic for the last sort of season in terms of a shoulder. But we just find that once we've had 3 or 4 really good throws in a row, we just shut it down, because there's no point, having another 3 or 4 good throws isn't really going to help. Each session has a goal, and once we achieve that goal, we might have 12 planned and we get to 8 throws, which we did the other day down here. And Kelsey's like, yep, that's enough. I've had it. I'm happy. So we don't push it. We really just try and work on quality. And again, at this point in her career, that's okay to do. She's kind of stabilized her technical model, obviously, with a developing athlete. And that's why I asked the question earlier, how many throws was she taking? You kind of need to throw more, because they just need to practice and figure it out a bit more. But for Kelsey, we're really content with just have enough throws, get the feeling, we'll move on to the next thing.
And just to add to that as well, so I guess I kind of give myself time to play with the javelin when I'm doing my point throws and my standing throws, and it's kind of like feel it out, kind of work some of the cues, work some of the technical stuff. But once we're on the runway, it's business. I've got, 9 to 12 throws. Those 9 to 12 throws are all really high quality throws. Take the time between sets if I need to, just so that standard, the bar is raised for those ones that are on the track. There's kind of no messing around.
And then in the afternoon, we go into the gym and we do circuit style lifting. And so that circuit based training, I guess, is that dynamic stuff I was talking about yesterday. So we'll show you some examples of it down in the gym today, but it's low load but high, I guess, working on different planes of motion and stabilization. So it might be doing a step up on a box but with a band from the side, so you're having to resist falling inwards whilst moving forward. So we're trying to challenge Kelsey in a few different planes of motion. So it's still high neural activation but without that real high load, and you don't walk away from it feeling like with massive muscle soreness for a couple of days, which is important because the next day we warm up with a bit of speed. So just some run through, like sort of accelerations, maybe 4 or 5 30-40 meter sprints just to get it firing, and then we go into the gym and do a pretty big Olympic lifting session. So at the moment, Tuesdays is overhead squat, push jerks, behind the neck jerks, hang snatch and back squat. On Saturdays, at the moment, we're doing clean pulls, snatch deadlift, and shrugs. And on these days we do we do heavy chin-ups one day and heavy push-ups the other. Wednesdays do a bit of plyometrics, so again, bounding, skipping, but it's still very basic, low-level stuff. We don't get too creative. We just work on good, strong hip position and just light foot contacts. Med ball, we were, when we first started, really creative and trying to find new different real javelin-specific things. We've kind of taken it back a step now. We really just do the basics, sort of chest pass, soccer throw, we call it a rugby pass, a side-on one, slams. We don't do anything too specific. As the season goes on, we might add in a bit more of a run into a few of those, but we sort of use the med ball as a way to train that elastic connection, so being able to feel the hips work and then the shoulder, rather than being too worried about the specific overhead pulling motion. Thursdays, the specific strength is really just hip, shoulder conditioning. So we sort of work on 3 or 2.5 days of work and then 1.5 days of really easy stuff. So we just sort of, Kelsey gets to Thursday and she needs to rest. And then we just repeat Friday, Saturday, and then take all the Sunday off. So it's a pretty simple training week. We work on a 3-week cycle. We first used to go sort of medium week, heavy week, light everything week. But we kind of changed that around in that we go sort of medium lifting, medium throwing. So we have a bit of a building week. Then we have a high strength week, with really low throwing week. And then we have a really easy gym week with a more technical focus in the throwing. So again, for Kelsey, we find that works. We back off the gym so the throws are really quality, and then we back off the throwing so the gym doesn't affect it.
And just to add to that as well, specific core strength every day. So especially coming back from my back injury this year, it's something we've kind of hampered down a little bit on was my core strength. And it's not just let's get in and do like heaps of crunches, heaps of leg raises, heaps of rotation stuff, but we've tried to start looking at it from linking the shoulders and the hips and making that strong and making that elastic really strong and being able to work that so it transitions into my javelin.
So our technical model is, again, we've just kind of picked bits and pieces, and I heard a really good podcast a few years ago of Harry Mara, who's Ashton Eaton's coach, say his whole decathlon comes down to something like 16 words. So each technical event, they've got sort of 1 or 2 words that they use, and on the fence in competition, they might talk about the event, but they come back to this one thing. And for us, the last couple of years, it's just been rhythm and right side. And I say rhythm and right side, and Kelsey associates a feeling with that. So kind of what Sammy was talking about last night. So we have words, but those words are associated with a feeling more so than a real rigid. I've got to put my right hand here, hold this back. It's just right side. She just knows just keep the feeling of holding the right back. And rhythm is just that, again, just that flowing motion, just letting it happen rather than being a robot.
Yeah, I've traditionally been a bit static in my movements down the runway, and I get a little bit almost stuck, or the opposite, I get really long. So Grant actually used the word of like being really staccato on the ground, and then he's like, just move, just feel and use the rhythm. So as Mike said, like he just has to give me that cue of rhythm, and it's kind of like, oh yeah, I've probably been a little bit like heavy on the ground, so it's just like kind of loosen off a little bit and just move. So it's good. It brings everything, all of these technical cues, kind of incorporates a few aspects we've worked on individually, rounds them out, and then can bring them back to something really simple.
And I guess the newest one we've sort of been working a bit this year is this load and lift. So it's kind of similar to what Hanu and Terry were talking about yesterday in terms of keeping those low angles through the impulse and delivery, so not going up and down, so not sort of popping up on the impulse and landing, just keeping everything flat into the throw, so you sort of load and then lift up and over the top of the block. So really trying to, once that front foot hits, catapult over the top rather than special K and fall through the floor. So that's what we work on now. It works for us, and I'm happy to talk to you guys a bit more about it if you want to come ask me any questions. Our training methods are pretty simple, as I've said, and you've probably just seen on our thing there. We don't do anything too crazy. I sort of work on the motto of do the basics really well. I guess the way Kelsey learns is influenced by sort of dynamic systems or constraints-based learning. My housemate and one of my best friends, Mike Maloney, is a PhD in skill acquisition, so he really loves this whole, that whole practice. And rather than breaking it down to try and teach a skill, just put in a constraint. So it might be, throwing a different implement, aiming for a target, trying to change the focus of what Kelsey's thinking about, and just letting her explore and make mistakes. And I think that's important. And I'm trying to do that more with my younger athletes, is just don't be too scared about being very rigid with how they have to throw. Just let them give them a framework to work within, and then just let them figure it out themselves and sort of step back and let them discover, because they don't need me to tell them if it was a bad throw. Even the young ones know what was good and what was bad. We work on flow and feel, so we don't do any static throwing. We don't do sort of standing throws or a rigid sort of 3-step throw. Everything we do has a walk in or a roll in. It always has motion. Again, we always feel that everything we do should be as the javelin throw, so ball throws should be like javelin throws. That's why we only use light balls. It stops Kelsey getting that rigid, robotic, analytical brain, which is, again, sometimes her default. She goes back to just think, and you can see it switching over, and you can almost see it come up in the way she moves. So having to bring back this flow and feel and rhythm is important. Some movements we avoid, and a lot of that was due to the initially shoulder stuff. So we don't bench press, we don't do pullovers. Instead, we do weighted push-ups. That's a bit more motion through her scapula, so we feel she can actually push a lot of weight, still get pec development without that. Pullovers, getting in that past the shoulder position, she really struggled with pain-wise. So we looked at the movement. We tried to find something that was similar, and to us, neutral grip chin-ups. So pulling from here, elbows in through, has a very similar motion to a pullover. And so that's what we do as our alternative, and we find that has a really good, obviously, lat development in the sort of the motion of the throw anyway. So we avoided lumbar extensions. So again, we don't do lots of over the back sort of stuff, partly due to Kelsey's history with the back, but also, again, just a needs analysis. We looked at things that we like and we don't like, and we don't see a purpose for it right now. We don't use overweight balls and javelins. Again, that was initially elbow, shoulder related. Now it's just a feel thing. We just enjoy what we've been doing. I mean, we want to work up to maybe a 700 gram ball this year. That's our goal. But I don't think Kelsey will ever really get up to the really heavy ones. because of the way that we throw the balls is like a javelin, and we don't want to change her kinematics. Her strength is being able to hold the arm back here. If it gets too heavy, it's going to start creeping in, and we'll lose that natural strength that Kels has.
So the little bit of self-testing and screening methods, which I already mentioned, that I worked on with my physio. So we'll just run through them quickly now, but we'll really get a chance to demonstrate them when we go out for the practical side of stuff. So there's just 2 simple tests for my shoulder, which we call the scarecrow, which is essentially testing IR and ER, and then a really simple basic elevation test. And then for my back, traditionally was just to really get a sense of how well my back was moving and the sort of rotation I had with it. So it was a lunge with rotation, a simple bow and arrow. So the flexion and extension slide tests, they came about a little bit more recently with some of the back niggles I've had in the past 12 months. And then what we've also found is that my hip flexors are really influenced on my back as well. So really simple test for that every time I go to throw. Internal rotation and external rotation of the shoulder.
So we'll go through these when we go down to the floor. I thought I'd give a bit of a plug for the stuff we do in Canberra. So we have a great National Institute. This is our weight room. It's quite big. We've got a great recovery centre. We've got sort of testing facilities. So if anyone ever wants to come down, I know you guys go to South Africa. It's not that much further to pop on down to Australia. It's only an extra 10 hours in the plane. If you're going to stay for a month, it's worth it. We came here for a week. And so if you do come down, you can come in and jump in on our PhD testing and do our 3D motion analysis, do our hip strength measures, body composition, and also get some really good training in. And we'd love to have anyone who wants to come down and hang out with us in Canberra. There's my email address if you want to get in contact. And so just before we go down, I'm going to go through a few of our, I've just got some videos on here which I'll show you some of the exercises we can't do in the gym downstairs. Hopefully this works. Kelsey's already warmed up, so we can pretty much get straight into it when we get down there.
So here's massage. But sports massage. So as I said, he can take the tests and is really good at knowing my body now and understanding what measures are a little bit abnormal and what he needs to to hit to get a good release.
So this was Kelsey throwing the other day, and I'll just quickly talk through what we talk about with our technical model. So as you can see, that flowing kind of move into a delivery, that's a 5-step for us. So the actual purposeful last 5 steps into the throw, but she gets a bit of motion first. Slow it down really quick. Sweep, hit, whack. And so for us, we talk about keeping that right foot low as it sweeps through and landing with the foot underneath. So trying to see this, sort of line it up so that foot's underneath that armpit. Slightly bent at the knee, hips held back, arms back, shoulders, left side's closed up. And then we sort of call this concept riding the right. So you ride the right foot down to the ground and let the left foot just get there rather than reaching for it at the moment. Hopefully if we've done this right, there's a nice straight line through here, that shoulder's closed off, the hands outside the foot. This angle here isn't too big. It's sort of ideally you'd like to stay over the right a little bit more, so I keep Kelsey's weight back further. From there, this is obviously Kelsey's strength. She's able to leave that arm back as she rolls up and hits that really big bowed position. And then from there, it's a matter of coming up and over the top. So Kels traditionally used to lose that back foot and fall straight through the throw. And then we sort of went the opposite way and tried to use it too much, and she actually pulled her weight down. Everything was coming down through the throw. So we kind of find that sweet spot of engaging the right foot, or we call it dropping the anchor. So drop the anchor. So hold yourself up, and then as soon as she's let go of the javelin, just letting it come off and finish out through the throw. So you sort of saw some of those throws earlier. Kelsey just barrels through the end in a very uncontrolled manner. We like to think at the moment that's a lot more of a controlled finish. So, and the finish of the throw sort of suggests what has come before it. So if it's a really controlled manner, she's more likely to have held positions. But that's the throw. Some of the stuff. So again, we've tried to find alternatives to pullovers. So we've got this cool slide device in the gym. So we've kind of found an alternative way to do a bit of a muscle up pullover exercise. You can add a band to it to make it resistance. But again, and then when we got creative in the gym in Cologne, we didn't have one of those things. So we just made a band-based version of that. So again, a lot of what we do, we just try and be as creative as possible to work within what we have. This is a really good device that we have for hip stability. So it's essentially a bunch of shopping trolley wheels on the bottom. They're just multi-directional. And again, it just adds that sort of hip proprioception, so that sort of awareness of hip in space, as well as sort of core activating everything together. A few of the coaches in Australia have just got a nice plank of wood and gone down to the hardware shop and bolted on a few wheels and made a $20 equivalent. I think these things cost about 250 euro on their own, but you can make your own for about $20. So that's usually a better way to do it. We do a lot, again, some stuff with the cables. So a universal machine. So this sort of push-pull exercise we think is really good for, again, and sort of single leg RDLs. So trying to change where the resistance is coming from and cause Kelsey to sort of stabilize whilst creating motion has been important for that sort of awareness of body positions. And then finally, I just thought I'd show this because it's funny. If you come down to our gym, Kelsey's got a photo up on the wall. And so sometimes your only training partner is herself up in the background there. But yeah, as I said, we squat deep at the moment. We'll probably change that as the season goes along, but we've got a great facility in Australia. So as I said, if anyone's interested in coming down and visiting, you're more than we'll look after you. Cool. Let's go downstairs and play around.